All right, guys. So we're going to continue on with our crime scene notes. Um, we're going to start going over the 7 S's of crime scene investigation. You do need to know all 7. We're not going to cover all 7 today. I think we're going to get down to sketch, though, so most of them. So your first step is basically if we're going to a crime scene, these are like the 7 steps that you have to do in order. So the first things first is secure the scene. So the first responding police officer must make sure the scene is secure by first making sure all individuals in the area are safe, and second by preserving evidence. So safety is the first thing we have to do. So is anyone hurt? Do we need to call an ambulance? Um, like he would start responding and giving first aid if someone was injured before carrying out evidence, because obviously we want to preserve life. But if there is no one there that is hurt, everyone is safe, then the next step is to make sure that we are blocking off everything so that all evidence can be preserved, making sure no one is coming in and out, no one is touching anything, no one is moving anything. So obtain medical assistance if needed, always is step 1. But then look for suspects. If there are suspects, then they need to be put in custody. So if there are still suspects there, they're arrested. Step 2. Step 3 is now that we have, people who needed help being helped, people who needed to be arrested, now we can isolate the area. So exclude all unauthorized personnel. No one else should be allowed in there. Even if it's their house, like they do have to leave. We have to barricade so we can start preserving evidence and then collect it. Put up tape, ropes, barricades, or position guards so no one may enter, leave. You have to have a security log of all who visit the scene, timestamp signed saying who was there, who was not, which prevents our loss of evidence. So you don't have to do tape and rope and barricades. Like it depends. Like if it's inside of a house, we'll close the door. Like that's barricading the scene, locking it, kicking out the people who live there because they can't be there right now. But if it's in a public place, then yes, we're going to have ropes or barricades or something, because no one else should be allowed in. Very few people are allowed in. The next part, separating witnesses. Okay, so let's say we had some witnesses there. So this is only going to count if there is witnesses there. If there's not, then you don't do this. But if there are witnesses, the witnesses must not be allowed to talk to one another. This prevents them from working together to create a story or collusion. So if there's only one witness, okay, we just sit them down. We'll talk to them as soon as we get it barricaded off, because we want to get their testimony when their memory is fresh. But if there are multiple witnesses, they are supposed to be separated, even if they're family, like that, they are supposed to be separated, especially in public where it's strangers. But family members could be talking together, trying to form their story, trying to make their stories match if they're trying to hide something. So that's just kind of part of the next step. As long as if everyone's safe and everyone dangerous has been arrested, if there are witnesses left, they need to be separated until we can talk to them. So example, an innocent bystander running from a crime scene in fear of being shot could be mistaken for a shooter fleeing the scene. So witnesses need to be carefully examined to describe what they saw, not what they thought happened. So basically anyone there, we're going to stop. You should not assume that anyone is the bad guy. So it could just be an innocent person running because they heard gunshots, but everyone that is in the scene is going to be stopped, is going to be separated, is going to be talked to. Witnesses need to be carefully examined to describe what they saw, but not what they thought happened. So we've talked about eyewitness procedures for a while. This is just reminding you that our memories are very fragile. They're very easy to manipulate. So you need to be very straightforward with how you talk to an eyewitness. Next step is scan the scene. So forensic examiners scan the scene to see where photos should be taken. So this is before the photos happen, but your forensic examiners come in. So usually your crime scene investigation team should be the next ones in. You've blockaded it off. Now they're going to come in. They're going to just scan the area. So before doing any work, just where do I think I need to be taking evidence from? Where do I think the crime occurred? This is where I need to collect the most stuff. They're just making a plan. That's all scan means, is you're making a plan. The primary crime scene is where the crime occurred. So these are going to be vocab terms for you. The primary crime scene is where the crime actually happened. The secondary crime scene is in some way related to the crime, but is not where the actual crime took place. There's not always a secondary. But let's say a person was murdered and then they moved their body. Well, the place that they moved their body to is obviously important. Like we're going to need to check that area for evidence, but it's not where the crime occurred. So where the crime occurred, where they were murdered, is the primary crime scene. But where their body was moved to and how they, so like the car, where like all the places that the body was placed on its way to its new destination would be secondary crime scenes. All places we have to check for evidence as well. After you've scanned, you see the scene, meaning you actually take pictures. So pictures, video, they don't have to be just with a regular camera. It could be with different types of lighting, so infrared, UV lighting, but taking pictures. That's what they're doing. Okay, so a crime scene examiner looks at the scene. The photographer unit takes photos of the overall area and close-up photos with and without a measuring ruler. So they should always be putting rulers down for any piece of evidence that we're going to deem important, especially things that you have to scale, like blood spatter, shoe prints. Like if the shoe prints are usually get wiped away pretty easily. So I need to get a good picture next to a ruler so I know exactly how big that footprint was so I can know the shoe size of our suspect. If you take it without a ruler, it's basically pointless because then you have no idea. You just know type of shoe, which is very little information. So we're going to go over more about how to take proper pictures, but basically there should always be like an overall area picture. So like from far up, getting the whole scene, medium, getting a little closer down, and then every piece of evidence that you're deeming important should have a picture with and without the ruler. So without, so you can see it as it was, but then with a ruler, so we have sizing. Keep clicking myself. And then the last one we're going to talk about today is sketching the scene. So sketching the scene means that after they've done their pictures, most crime scenes have to be cleaned up. Like we can't just leave them out forever, especially if it's in someone's home or it's in a public place. Like they want their home back. The public place wants their place back. So we can't leave them up for that long. So that's once it's been barricaded, once the evidence has been taken pictures of, then we collect the evidence. So basically, all we're going to have left at the end of this is our pictures and the sketch of the scene to know exactly the way it found it, because we are going to have to clean it up. So inside of the sketch, basically you have to have a couple things that have to be on it to be like what they require for your sketch. So the north should be labeled. So like northeast, southwest. The north has to be labeled. You don't actually have to put northeast, southwest, because if you have an arrow pointing north, then you should know where the other ones are. But you do have to have a north arrow on like which way you were facing in the crime scene in your sketch, so we know where things are. Okay, so there has to be a north labeled. All important objects are supposed to be in your sketch. So if there's a weapon, the body, any piece of evidence that you're deeming to be pretty important need to be in your sketch, as well as any other objects in the vicinity that would be important to note, like doors, because those could be exits, windows, because those could be exits, big pieces of furniture, trees, vehicles. So like that would be outside if there's trees and vehicles. But anything that's going to be big that we should know was existing in that crime scene area should also be a part of the sketch. So all important piece of evidence in the body, as well as anything that could be an exit, anything that's big furniture, big vehicles, like just anything big should be noted in your sketch. Now, all of your important pieces of evidence should be measured in your sketch, okay? So that would be the important part, is we'll practice doing these measurements in class, but they need to be measured from 2 immovable landmarks. So see how, so this is evidence D, and it's measured from 2 immovable landmarks, the walls. It's measured from the wall. So if you're inside a building, that's very easy. You just wall to wall, that works. But maybe the wall is maybe there's so much furniture that you can't really get a clear shot. Then it can be from big pieces of furniture that would be unlikely to move. So like really heavy pieces of furniture, you can measure from that. But anything like a light kitchen chair, you wouldn't measure from that because that can be moved around. So it has to be heavy objects that are unlikely to move. So immovable landmarks or the walls, basically. But you measure from 2 points, always. Anything else? Oh, and you also need to include the date, the time, the location, the case number, everyone's names who was a part of it. Most of the time, after you make these sketches, you input them into a computer software program. So it's not like we keep our drawn sketch, but you do all your measurements, you draw it quickly, so it doesn't have to look perfect, but you have all your measurements written down, and then you go and create it in a computer program. So just kind of showing you again from 2 immovable landmarks. So this is one example. This is called the triangulation method, where you go from corner of an immovable landmark to another corner, and wherever you meet them, they should meet. So if I'm measuring from this corner to this corner, then I need to measure from a different corner now, but to that same spot on the body or on the piece of evidence. For this one, so we have the triangular method or the rectangular method. So this one makes a triangle, this one makes a rectangle. So this one going from like 90 degrees, so 90 degrees from the wall, 90 degrees from the other wall, writing down their exact measurements so that you can go back and fill in where they were. Anything that is big should be measured as well. So like the desk, you should say how long it is. The chairs, how long it is. If there's a couch, if there's a bookcase, like you should be giving size, scale of how big they actually take up the room. So that when you put that in a computer software program, it puts them exactly where they were. So we basically have an exact replica of the crime scene later after we've cleaned it up. And that's it for our notes. If it would let me stop.